The night was loud with shouting, the kind that made neighbors peek from behind their curtains. "Get out, Naomi!" Juma's voice roared as the front door slammed open, the glow of the porch light falling on a scattered mess. Pots, plates, a mattress, even her wedding photo smashed against the floor. The chickens outside were already asleep when Naomi heard the heavy knock. Her heart leapt. Her husband was finally home after days away. She quickly wiped her hands on her old wrapper, straightened her headscarf and rushed to open the door with a smile ready on her lips. But the smile shattered. Juma stepped in, his arm wrapped tightly around a younger woman. The stranger's perfume filled the house, sharp and sweet, drowning out the familiar smell of smoke and porridge. She carried a woven basket, heavy with new blankets, her bangles clinking proudly as she laughed at something Juma whispered to her. Naomi froze. Her children, startled by the noise, peeped from their sleeping mat. "Juma, who is this?" Naomi's voice cracked. The man she once called husband did not even look guilty. His tone was sharp, final. "This is Karen. From today she is my wife. You, Naomi, you must leave." Naomi's knees weakened. She clutched her chest, breathless. "Leave, after giving you children, after everything I have sacrificed. Juma, don't do this, please, not in front of the children." But Karen stepped forward with a cruel smile, her voice dripping with mockery. "You call this a home? Look at these ragged mats, this smoke-stained wall. You should thank him for finally choosing a real woman. Move aside, old hen." Naomi gasped, tears burning her eyes. She dropped to her knees in front of Juma, grabbing his hand. "Juma, don't shame me like this. Where will I go with the children at this hour? Please, if you ever loved me." Juma yanked his hand away. His eyes were hard. "Enough, woman. I said leave." He stormed across the house, grabbed Naomi's bundle of clothes, and hurled it out the door. The bundle landed in the dirt. The children cried louder, clutching at their mother. "Baba, don't chase Mama," the eldest wailed, tugging his father's trouser, but Juma shoved the child aside. "I don't want noise in my house. Out, all of you." Karen crossed her arms, laughing softly, leaning against the doorway as though enjoying a play. "Don't waste your tears, Naomi," she sneered. "You've been replaced, that's all." Juma seized Naomi's arm and dragged her toward the door. She stumbled, begging, clinging to his shirt. "Juma, I have nowhere to go. These children, your blood, you cannot throw us away like trash." But his only answer was to push her out into the night. She fell hard onto the ground, dust staining her wrapper. Her children scrambled after her, sobbing. And then the door slammed. Laughter echoed from inside, Karen's high-pitched giggle and Juma's deep chuckle, slicing Naomi's heart into pieces. Outside, barefoot in the cold night, Naomi pulled her children into her arms. Her body trembled, but her voice, low and shaking, whispered a vow to herself. One day he will beg for me to return, and I will not." The slam of the steel door echoed down the quiet estate like a gunshot. Naomi staggered on the concrete steps, clutching her crying children. The porch light above flickered, throwing a harsh glow on her tear-stained face. Behind the locked door, Juma's deep laughter and Karen's shrill giggle stabbed at her like knives. Naomi's bundle of clothes lay scattered on the pavement where Juma had thrown it. A pair of tiny shoes rolled onto the road. She bent quickly, gathering them with trembling hands while her youngest clung to her waist, sobbing. Across the street, curtains shifted. A neighbor's television light flickered in the window, but instead of help, Naomi got whispers. He finally chased her out," a woman muttered to another in the balcony. With Karen, "Ha, that one walks like she owns the place now," the other answered, shaking her head. Naomi's ears burned with shame. Her chest heaved. She wanted to scream, to shout that she had given Juma everything. Her youth, her loyalty, her body, her years. Instead, her lips trembled in silence. "Mama, are we going to sleep outside?" her eldest asked, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. Naomi froze. She looked at his wide, tearful eyes, then at the toddler in her arms shivering in the night air. For 1 second, her knees buckled, the world spinning. She imagined them curled on the cold pavement till morning, the neighbors watching like vultures. Then something inside her snapped. She pressed the children tight to her chest, her tears drying into something harder. "No," she whispered fiercely. Her voice shook but carried fire. "We will not beg. We will not sleep on the street. If he thinks he has destroyed me, he is wrong. I will find us a way." She gathered the bundle of clothes, straightened her back, and stepped off the porch into the dark road. The night swallowed her, but she did not stop. Every step echoed with humiliation and a spark of vengeance. Behind her, laughter still spilled from the house. Karen's glassy giggle, Juma's deep chuckle. But Naomi didn't look back. Naomi's slippers slapped against the tarmac as she dragged her children along the dimly lit road. Her bundle of clothes weighed heavy on her shoulder, but not as heavy as the silence in her chest. The youngest had already fallen asleep against her arm, while the eldest stumbled beside her, still sniffing back tears. She walked straight to her sister's house. The estate gate creaked as she pushed it open, praying under her breath. "Please, let her understand. Please." When her sister Miriam opened the door, the bright hallway light spilled over Naomi's tired face and the children clinging to her. For a moment, Miriam's expression softened, but then her lips pressed into a thin, cold line. "Naomi, what are you doing here at this hour?" Naomi's voice broke as she answered, "Miriam, Juma has thrown me and the children out. Please, just let us stay here tonight. I'll figure things out in the morning. I beg you." Miriam's husband appeared behind her, crossing his arms, his face already hard with irritation. "Stay here. Naomi, we warned you about that man. Didn't we tell you Juma would disgrace you? And now you want to bring your drama into my house." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "Please, brother-in-law, just one night. Look at the children. They have nowhere to sleep." Miriam's husband scoffed. "Not my problem. You chose your bed. Now lie in it. Don't drag us into your shame." Miriam lowered her eyes, refusing to meet Naomi's desperate stare. "Naomi, we can't help you. If the neighbors see you here, they'll say we're harboring your mess. Go back to Juma and sort it out." Naomi shook her head, her voice trembling. "Go back to the man who dragged me out like a dog. Miriam, you are my sister. Blood. Please don't do this to me." But Miriam stepped back, closing the door inch by inch. "You should have been a better wife, Naomi. Karen wouldn't be in your place if you knew how to keep your man." The words sliced like a blade. Naomi gasped, clutching her children tighter. Then the door clicked shut in her face. She stood there, on the porch, her children whimpering against her legs. For a long moment, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The streetlight buzzed above her, cold and merciless. Finally, with shaking hands, she wiped her tears and whispered to herself, "So even my own blood has turned against me. Then I will stand alone." She turned and walked back into the night. Naomi's legs dragged as she carried her youngest on her hip and held the eldest by the hand. The night was colder now, her breath visible in the dim streetlight. Every house she passed was locked tight, windows glowing with warm yellow light that she and her children no longer had. She finally reached a deserted bus stop at the corner of the street. A cracked wooden bench sat under a flickering light pole. Exhaustion hit her like a wall. She lowered her bundle onto the bench, then pulled her children close. Her eldest whispered through chattering teeth, "Mama, are we sleeping here?" Naomi swallowed hard. She wanted to lie, to tell him they would be fine, that a bed was waiting just around the corner, but the truth stuck in her throat. She nodded slowly, her arms tightening around them. Then she laid her wrapper across their laps, though it did little against the biting cold. The youngest whimpered and buried his face in her chest. Naomi kissed his hair, rocking him gently as her own tears streamed silently. Cars passed now and then, their headlights washing over the three figures huddled on the bench. Some drivers slowed down to look, then sped off. A group of young men laughed as they walked past, tossing words like stones. "Ooh, see that woman, Juma's wife, right? She's finished. Thrown out like garbage. Shame." Naomi closed her eyes, her body trembling with humiliation. But the voices cut deeper than the cold. Hours crawled by, and the children finally drifted into restless sleep, their little bodies twitching from the chill. Naomi sat awake, staring at the empty road, whispering prayers under her breath. Then footsteps. A woman's voice broke the silence. Naomi. Naomi lifted her head, startled. Standing a few feet away was Esther, her old friend from the market, carrying a bag of groceries. Esther's face froze as she took in the scene, Naomi clutching her 2 children, shivering on a bus stop bench in the dead of night. "My God, Naomi, what are you doing here?" Esther gasped, rushing forward. Naomi's lips trembled. She wanted to explain, but the words caught in her throat. All she managed was a broken sob. "Juma, he threw us out." Esther dropped her groceries and grabbed Naomi's shoulders, her eyes fierce with pity. "You mean you've been out here with the children? No, you can't stay here. Come, you're coming with me tonight." Naomi's tears flowed freely now, but for the first time they weren't just from pain, they were from relief. Esther hurried Naomi and the children through the quiet estate streets, one arm around Naomi's shoulders, the other carrying her groceries. Naomi's bundle of clothes felt like lead, but Esther didn't let her slow down. They reached a small 2-bedroom apartment, tucked between taller flats. Esther pushed the door open, and the warm glow of her sitting room spilled out. Naomi blinked against the sudden comfort, the soft couch, the smell of fried onions still lingering in the air, and the neatness of a home untouched by betrayal. "Sit," Esther urged, guiding Naomi to the couch. "The children first. Let them rest." Naomi laid her babies gently onto the cushions. Her eldest curled up instantly, too exhausted to even speak, while the youngest clutched at her wrapper even in sleep. Naomi brushed their hair tenderly, her hands shaking. Esther stood watching, her arms crossed, her eyes fierce. "Naomi, I cannot believe Juma would do this to you, to the children. I swear, if I see him—" Naomi's voice broke as she cut in. "Esther, what am I going to do? He has already replaced me. My own sister turned me away. I have nothing left." Esther knelt beside her, gripping her hand. "You have something. You have me. And as long as I breathe, you and these children will not sleep outside again. Do you hear me?" Naomi's tears flowed freely, her chest shaking with sobs. She buried her face in her friend's shoulder, whispering, "Thank you. God bless you." Esther stroked her back gently, but her voice was firm. "Rest tonight, Naomi, but tomorrow you must rise. You cannot let Juma's cruelty define your life. You must be strong, for them." She nodded toward the sleeping children. Naomi lifted her head, her eyes swollen but burning with a new fire. And for the first time that night, she allowed herself to breathe. It was not victory, it was not security, but it was a fragile, safe space, a chance to survive another day. She whispered a vow under her breath, barely audible but sharp as steel. "He threw me out like nothing, but one day, Juma will see what he lost." Juma's house smelled of new perfume and freshly fried chicken. Karen had claimed Naomi's kitchen like a queen on a throne. She stood at the counter in Naomi's apron. Yes, the same one Naomi used to wear every evening while cooking for Juma, now stretched tightly across Karen's hips. Karen's laugh was loud, sharp, the kind that cut into silence like glass. She tossed her braids over her shoulder and strutted across the living room barefoot, balancing a glass of wine. On the sofa lay Naomi's throw blanket, kicked carelessly to the floor, while Karen sprawled herself where Naomi once used to sit with the children. Juma leaned back in his chair, a smug grin plastered across his face. He had traded his once-worn work shirt for a crisp new polo Karen had picked out for him. His hand rested lazily on her thigh, as though he was parading her, like a prize. "Can you believe the way she cried?" Karen sneered, her voice dripping with mockery. "Begging like a lost dog at the gate. The drama. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost." Juma chuckled. Naomi always liked to pretend she was strong, but look at her. Couldn't even handle competition. The poor woman thought being a good wife was enough. He sipped his beer and smirked. "But I told you, Karen, I wanted more, and now I have it." Karen leaned closer, brushing her lips against his ear. "And you'll never regret it. I'll give you things she never could. Confidence, fire, real fun." She stood up suddenly, crossed to Naomi's old wardrobe box, still sitting in the hallway, half unpacked, and began pulling things out. A faded dress and a pair of Naomi's heels. Karen slipped her feet into them, wobbling but laughing as she did a mocking spin. "Look, Juma," she sang out, mocking Naomi's shy tone. "Dinner is ready, dear husband." "Oh, don't mind the children. They're just hungry again." Both of them burst into cruel laughter. Juma even clapped his hands as if Karen were performing a comedy skit, his arrogance swelling. For a brief moment, though, the laughter didn't quite reach his eyes. He looked toward the window, the streetlights outside casting a pale glow, and something flickered. Guilt, unease, something he quickly drowned with another swig of beer. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy twirling in Naomi's dress, stepping on the memories of the woman and children they had thrown out. The night felt heavy with arrogance, yet in that arrogance, an unseen shadow was forming. For every laugh at Naomi's expense, fate was silently sharpening its knife. Meanwhile, Naomi sat at the edge of a borrowed mattress on the floor, her children curled up beside her. The room smelled faintly of kerosene from the small tin lamp her friend Esther had lit in the corner. The glow was soft, but Naomi's face looked older, heavier, weighed down by exhaustion that sleep refused to fix. Her son stirred in his sleep, muttering, "Mama, are we going home tomorrow?" The words stabbed her chest. Naomi swallowed hard, stroking his hair, whispering, "Soon, baby, soon," but inside she felt the truth suffocating her. She had no home to take them back to. And then Esther bustled in with 2 chipped mugs of tea, her forehead creased with sympathy and worry. "Drink something, Naomi. You've hardly eaten since yesterday. You'll fall sick, and then what about the children?" Naomi tried to smile, but it came out twisted and weak. "How do I eat when my heart feels like it's been ripped out, Esther? How do I drink when my children are asking for the bed they grew up in?" Esther sighed, sitting beside her. She reached out, gripping Naomi's hand firmly. "You're stronger than you think. Juma may have humiliated you, but you're still standing. That's more than he expected." Naomi's voice cracked. "I gave him everything, B. My youth, my strength. I built that house with him, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, and now I'm nothing, replaced like a worn shoe." Tears streamed silently down her cheeks, and Esther pulled her into a hug. But behind her friend's shoulder, Naomi's eyes burned, not just with grief, but with something harder forming in the shadows of her pain. "Resolve," she whispered, almost to herself. "He thinks I'm finished. But this is not my end." Her children shifted in their sleep, and she pressed a kiss to their foreheads. For them, if not for herself, Naomi began to plant the first fragile seed of determination, and for the first time since being thrown out, the despair in her chest flickered with something else, an ember that, given time, could grow into fire. The living room glittered with lights that hadn't been switched on in months. Every bulb glowing, music blasting from Juma's speakers. Karen had invited 2 of her friends over, and together they lounged on Naomi's old sofa, sipping wine and giggling as if they owned the place. Karen, you've really scored," one of the friends teased, eyeing Juma with approval. "This house is beautiful, and the man, a catch." Karen smirked, crossing her legs dramatically. "I told you girls, when you know your worth, you don't settle. Naomi wasted her life being a doormat. I know how to get what I want." The women burst into laughter. Juma puffed up, leaning back proudly, as though he were a prize bull at auction. He draped his arm around Karen, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Naomi was comfortable," he said with a dismissive shrug. "But Karen, she challenges me, makes me feel alive." Karen's eyes sparkled with mischief. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper meant to sting, even though Naomi wasn't there to hear it. Besides, what kind of woman lets herself grow so plain? She forgot how to be desirable. A man can only take so much boredom. The room erupted in laughter again, but behind the noise there was an ugly undercurrent. Juma glanced at Karen's friends, and for a brief second, discomfort crossed his face. He didn't like the way they looked at him, as if he were just another toy Karen had snatched. But the moment passed, and he quickly plastered on his grin and raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he toasted. "To better women," Karen added loudly, smirking with cruel satisfaction. Glasses clinked, laughter roared, and all the while, Naomi's photo still hung crooked on the wall. Karen noticed it, sneered, and without a second thought, marched over and yanked it down. "Out with the old," she said, tossing the frame into the trash. The friends cheered. Juma forced a laugh, but his eyes lingered on the broken glass, just for a heartbeat longer than he should have. Unseen by them, that tiny crack in his arrogance was the first step toward a downfall none of them expected. Morning light spilled weakly through Esther's curtains, painting Naomi's tired face in soft gold. She had barely slept, but when the first rooster crowed, she rose quietly so as not to wake the children. Today she had made a decision. She would not let Juma and Karen write her ending. Naomi borrowed a plain dress from Esther, just simple cotton, nothing fancy, and tied her hair back. She stood before the cracked mirror above the sink, staring at herself for a long time. The reflection looked fragile, but in her eyes a spark had returned. "God give me strength," she whispered, pressing her palms together. By mid-morning she walked into town, her children trailing beside her. The streets buzzed with life, hawkers shouting, matatas honking, but Naomi felt every eye on her. Whispers followed her like shadows. Isn't that Juma's wife, the one he threw out? She looked so thin. Shame. Imagine, replaced just like that. Some women have no luck. Each word pierced her like a thorn, but Naomi straightened her back and kept walking. She clutched her children's hands tighter, refusing to bow her head. At the small cafe near the bus stage, Naomi stopped. She had heard they needed help. Her palms were sweaty, but she stepped inside anyway. The owner, a plump woman with sharp eyes, looked her up and down. "Yes, what do you want?" Naomi swallowed, her voice trembling but firm. I heard you might need someone. I can clean, serve, cook, anything." The woman raised an eyebrow. Aren't you Juma's wife?" Naomi's throat tightened, but she forced herself to answer. "I was, but now I am just Naomi, a mother, and I need work." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then, surprisingly, the woman's gaze softened just a little. "You've got courage to come here, Naomi. Most women in your shoes would be hiding." Naomi's cheeks flushed, but she held the woman's stare. "Hiding won't feed my children." The woman studied her again, then finally nodded. "Come tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock sharp. Don't be late." Naomi exhaled sharply, her eyes stinging with relief. She whispered a shaky, "Thank you," and walked out, clutching her children's hands. The whispers on the street still followed her, but for the first time she didn't care. She had taken her first step. And to anyone watching her walk through the marketplace, head high despite the gossip, she looked less like a broken woman and more like a survivor rebuilding piece by piece. The next morning arrived with the pale blush of dawn. Naomi tied her faded headscarf tightly, adjusting the second-hand dress Esther had ironed for her. Her heart pounded as she checked her sleeping sons one last time. Little Daniel, just 3 years old, curled in a soft blanket beside his older brother Malik, who was already awake and watching her with sleepy, worried eyes. "Mama," Malik murmured, rubbing his fists. "Are we going home today?" Naomi knelt beside him, brushing a kiss over his forehead. "Not yet, baby. But I'm going to work, and soon we'll have our own home again." He nodded slowly, and Naomi smiled, small, trembling, but real. Esther appeared in the doorway with a steaming mug of porridge. "Here, drink this before you go," she said gently. "You'll need strength." Naomi accepted it gratefully. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "By standing tall," Esther replied, gripping her shoulders firmly. "You're stronger than he ever believed." With those words echoing in her chest, Naomi stepped out into the crisp morning air. The streets were still half asleep, vendors setting up stalls, buses groaning awake, and yet every footstep felt monumental. She wasn't walking toward humiliation anymore. She was walking toward a future. Across town, music thumped through the walls of Juma's house. Karen swayed lazily in silk pajamas, humming along as she scrolled through online boutiques. A pile of Naomi's old kitchen utensils, the ones she had once saved up months to buy, lay discarded by the back door, waiting to be thrown out. "Babe," Karen called from the sofa, "we should get a new TV, something bigger. I don't like how this one looks." Juma, half-dressed and half-drunk on his own ego, chuckled. "Whatever you want. This is our house now." Karen smirked. "My house." They laughed together, the sound hollow and ugly as they tossed the last reminders of Naomi into a trash bag and dragged it to the curb. But the irony was thick in the air. While they were throwing away pieces of her, Naomi was already building something new. Back at the cafe, Naomi stood nervously behind the counter, a borrowed apron tied neatly around her waist. Her hands shook slightly as she wiped a table, but when the first customer smiled and thanked her, something warm bloomed inside her chest. Pride. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't the woman who was thrown out. She was Naomi, hard-working, determined, and still standing. And as the sun climbed higher over the town, two very different stories were being written, one built on arrogance and one built on quiet strength. One would soon crumble, the other had only just begun. 1 year later, the afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the newly painted storefront that read, Mama Malik's Kitchen. The scent of freshly baked mandazi and spicy stew drifted down the busy street, drawing in a small crowd of customers. Inside, Naomi moved gracefully from counter to counter, clipboard in hand, hair neatly tied back beneath a branded scarf. Her apron, embroidered with the restaurant's name, was spotless. A confident smile tugged at her lips as she checked the day's earnings. She had started with nothing, one small job in a cafe, cleaning tables for tips. But Naomi had saved every coin, learned every recipe, and earned every loyal customer. With Esther's support and her own relentless drive, she had gone from server to owner. Naomi, one of her employees, called out from the kitchen. "We're running low on tomatoes. Order more from Kamau," she replied calmly, "and make sure the stew stays hot. We'll have a rush at lunchtime." Neighbors who once whispered behind her back now waved and praised her food. Even the local newspaper had done a feature on her story. Abandoned mother turns pain into prosperity. And yet, the sweetest part was not the money nor the success. It was the peace. But across town, life had carved a different story. Juma sat in a cramped single-room apartment with peeling paint and no electricity. The man who once boasted of upgrading now stared at a near-empty bottle of cheap gin. The house gone, the savings drained. Karen had taken everything she could. She had convinced him to invest in her business, only to siphon the money into her own accounts. And when the money dried up, so did her affection. One morning, she packed her bags, sneering, "You're nothing without money, Juma, and I don't do broke." That was 6 months ago. Since then, Juma had bounced between odd jobs and debt collectors. Friends who once cheered his new life stopped picking up his calls. Even his family had grown cold, ashamed of how he had treated Naomi and the children. Now, sitting alone on the edge of a squeaky mattress, Juma stared at a crumpled newspaper on the floor. On the front page was a photo of Naomi, smiling proudly in front of her thriving restaurant, with Malik and Daniel at her side. He traced the image with trembling fingers. "Naomi," he whispered, voice thick with regret. His chest ached with memories, her laughter in their kitchen, her tireless sacrifices, the warmth of their home, all the things he had traded for a hollow fantasy. And in that empty, silent room, Juma wept for the first time in years because he finally understood what he had thrown away. The following day, the automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Naomi stepped into the supermarket, holding a neatly folded shopping list in one hand and her reusable tote in the other. She wore a simple cream blouse tucked into navy trousers, her natural hair pulled into a soft bun, a delicate necklace catching the afternoon light. It had been 2 years since the night Juma threw her and the children out. 2 years since she'd stood outside their house sobbing, clinging to a past that no longer wanted her. Now she stood there by the shelf, effortlessly elegant, a gold pendant resting just below her collarbone. There was a glow to her now, not the kind bought with money, but the kind that came from peace. Her posture was confident, her eyes steady, and beside her she had a trolley filled with groceries. Good groceries, fresh produce, quality brands, things she once could never afford. And then something strange happened. "Excuse me, could you pass me that jar, please?" a man said. The voice was familiar, disarmingly so. She turned, and for a split second his heart stopped. "Naomi," he said, shocked, not sure if his eyes were deceiving him or if it was really her. It felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. "Naomi." The word fell from his lips again like a confession. She looked at him for a long, quiet moment, not coldly, not cruelly, just distantly, like he was a chapter she'd finished reading long ago. "Hello, Juma," she said softly. He swallowed hard. "You look well." "I am well," she replied, a small, knowing smile tugging at her lips. "Life has been kind. The words stung more than they should have. Life had not been kind to him, but she spoke as if kindness had chosen her. How are the kids?" he asked. "They're thriving," she answered. "School is good. They're happy. I'm happy." Silence stretched between them, the kind that carried weight. He noticed her nails, neat and polished, her shoes, clean and new. She had rebuilt, without him, in spite of him. "I'm glad," he murmured. "Really?" She nodded politely, then pushed her trolley and headed to the checkout. And just like that, she turned and walked away, leaving Juma standing alone between shelves of rice and regret. He watched her go, a hollow ache forming in his chest. That woman wasn't the Naomi who once begged him not to throw her out. This Naomi was untouchable, and it terrified him. Juma stared at his phone for hours before finally pressing the call button. Ring, ring, ring. "Hello?" Her voice, calm, unshaken. "Naomi, it's me." A pause, then a quiet breath. "I know. I saw you the other day. You looked good." His words were clumsy, too small for the storm of guilt swirling in his chest. "I just wanted to talk, to check in." "Why?" she asked. "Because I miss you. I miss them. I miss everything." There was another pause, but not the kind that invited hope. "You didn't miss us when you locked the door, Juma. I was a fool. I made mistakes. I didn't realize what I had." "No," she said firmly. "You did realize. You just didn't care." The line went silent. For a moment, he thought she'd hung up, but then she spoke again, softer this time. "The children are safe. They're loved. They're growing. But they don't need confusion. And I don't need apologies that arrive years too late. Please." His voice cracked. "Can I see them? Just once?" "I'll think about it," she replied. Not a promise, not a door reopened, just a distant courtesy. Then the line went dead. Juma lowered the phone and stared at the screen. He called again the next day, and the next. Messages went unread. Calls went unanswered. Once, he waited by the school gates, hoping for a glimpse, but Naomi had already warned security. The woman he once discarded was now unreachable, and the man who once believed he'd always have a second chance was learning the most painful truth of all. Sometimes the bridge you burn is the only path back. The rain hammered the tin roof of the single-room bedsitter like a relentless drum, but Juma barely noticed. He sat on the edge of a worn-out mattress, a half-empty cup of cold tea cradled in his hands, staring blankly at the peeling paint on the wall. This wasn't supposed to be his life. Once he had walked through glass doors into his own office. Once people had stood when he entered a room. Once his phone buzzed with business deals and invitations. Now the only messages he received were from debt collectors, and even they were starting to give up. It had started slowly. A few missed loan payments, a contract that fell through. Then Karen's betrayal, draining their joint account and vanishing without a word, leaving him to deal with the fallout. The house was the first thing to go, then the car, then the business. Friends stopped calling, relatives stopped answering. Everyone who'd once laughed at his jokes now crossed the street to avoid him. He reached for his phone again, scrolling through old photos, him and Karen in Zanzibar, champagne glasses raised. Him and Naomi at their wedding, her eyes filled with hope. His children as toddlers, laughing as they ran into his arms. His throat tightened. He had thrown it all away. There was a knock at the door. "Rent," barked the landlord's voice. 3 months overdue. "I'll give you until the end of the week, then you're out." Juma didn't reply. He just sat there, trembling slightly, the weight of his choices pressing down on his chest like a boulder. He thought of Naomi again, how calm she'd looked in that supermarket, how their son had smiled beside her. His son, his boy, now growing up without him. What must they think of him now? Did they think of him at all? He picked up his phone and typed another message, his fingers shaking. "Please. I don't want anything. I just want to see them, even for a minute." He hit send. The message remained unread. That night, Juma lay awake, listening to the rain and the hum of traffic beyond the window. He had lost everything, not just wealth or comfort, but the love, the respect and the family that once defined his world. And for the first time, he understood that this was not bad luck. This was the cost of cruelty. The late afternoon sun poured golden light through the cafe windows, warming the soft wood tables and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Naomi sat by the window, scrolling through an email on her tablet. She was waiting for a meeting, not a business one this time, but something far heavier. She had agreed to this against her better judgment. The message had come days ago, humble, trembling, almost broken. I don't want to hurt you anymore. I just want to see them, please. Just once, please. And now, for reasons she couldn't fully explain, she'd said yes. The bell above the door chimed. She looked up, and there he was, Juma. It took her a moment to recognize him. His clothes were worn, his shoulders slightly hunched, his once sharp features softened by exhaustion. There was no arrogance left in his walk, no swagger in his step, just a man who had been humbled by life. "Naomi," he said quietly, removing his cap as he approached. "Hello, Juma," she replied, her tone calm, even kind, but distant. The warmth of familiarity had long left her voice. He sat down across from her, fumbling with his hands. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, but it wasn't angry anymore. It was just real. "I don't know where to start," he finally whispered. "I ruined everything. I destroyed the only good thing I ever had, and every single day I live with that." Naomi said nothing. She simply watched him, not with hatred, but with a quiet, sad understanding. "I'm not here to beg for you back," he continued. "I know that's gone. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm begging for something else. Just a chance to see my children. I don't want to confuse them. I don't want to hurt them. I just want to be in their lives, even a little, to watch them grow, to be there if they ever need me." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "Please." Naomi took a slow breath, setting her tablet aside. "Do you remember the night you threw us out?" she asked softly. "Do you remember how I begged you, how they cried, how we slept outside because we had nowhere to go?" "I remember," he said, voice breaking, "and I hate myself for it." "For a long time," she continued, "I wanted you to feel what I felt that night. I wanted you to suffer, to hurt, to lose everything. And maybe you have, but the truth is that pain stopped being my burden a long time ago." He looked up at her then, and for the first time he saw it clearly. She wasn't angry, she wasn't bitter, she had simply outgrown the hurt. "I won't let you hurt them again," Naomi said firmly. "I will protect their peace above all else." But she paused, her voice softening. "I also believe they deserve to know their father, if they choose to." "Thank you," he whispered, tears slipping down his cheeks. "But this isn't a door back into my life," she added. "It's not a second chance for us. That part of the story is over. You will be a visitor, nothing more. If you show them love and consistency, maybe in time they'll trust you. But if you disappear again, I will never allow you near them." "I won't disappear," he said quickly. "Not this time." Naomi nodded, her expression unreadable, strong yet deeply human. "Then we'll see." She stood, gathering her things. Juma remained seated, staring up at her like a man watching a lighthouse from a shipwreck. "Naomi," he said softly as she turned to leave, "thank you for not hating me." She looked back with a faint, almost bittersweet smile. "I stopped hating you the moment I started loving myself." And with that, she walked out into a life she had built with her own 2 hands, leaving Juma behind with his regrets and the smallest spark of hope that maybe he could still be a father.